The average Muslim is a culture Muslim, born in a Muslim home, doesn't know anything about Muhammad. So when they hear an outsider, such as me, sharing with them the moral aspects of their prophet, first thing is, you're lying, you hate us, you're an Islamophobe, you're slandering our prophet. Because they can't believe this is what their sources teach. So we have to be very careful. Can't broad brush. That woman down the street who's living a very difficult life because she may be oppressed by her husband, who's got 4 or 5 kids, she just wants to survive. And at the end of the day, she wants God to be pleased with her. The way you approach her is not the same way you approach someone who's a militant Muslim trained to attack the Bible, ridicule Christians, and blaspheme the true God. That's different. So we have to distinguish between the two. So we have to be careful. So you meet them where they're at. Like what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9:19-23. To the Jew, I became a Jew. To one without the law, I became as one without the law, though I'm not without the law. I'm under the law of Christ. In other words, enter their world, step into their shoes, see things from their perspective so that you can be most effective in reaching them where they're at with the beauty of Jesus Christ.
So sounds like Jesus hanging out with prostitutes and tax collectors.
Yeah.
100%. So with a militant Muslim, you have to then adapt his mindset, because it's like, and a lot of people, Proverbs 26 verse 4, they'll read that part. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you become like him. But then the very next verse, verse 5, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he becomes wise in his own mind. So you have to know your audience and meet them where they're at. Now, with that said, when we talk about interfaith dialogue, now you're discussing with those who supposedly know Islam. So if you have a Christian, he's representing the church, he's going to be dialoguing with a Muslim who represents the Muslim community, and that will be their imam or their sheikh. He's in the know. He knows what Islam teaches. He's not the average Muslim who doesn't know. They are different, and they do have an agenda. And what's their agenda? And I'm sorry to say this. People may think, no, I'm being upfront. I'm distinguishing between two groups of Muslims. Those who know their religion, know what it teaches, and those who don't. Those who don't, they're about 90%. So don't think your Muslim neighbor is a terrorist. 90% of Muslims have no idea. Those who know what Islam teaches, and they do have an agenda. And what's the agenda? And this is from their sources, that they must reach a level in which they can then take over wherever they live, because they need to subjugate the land and its politics and its economics to Allah and his messenger, because they have a mandate. Just like we have the Great Commission, Matthew 28:18-20. Islam has a Great Commission, 16:125, chapter 16 of the Quran, Surah Al-Nahl, 125. Muslims are commanded to invite people to the way of their Lord, meaning Islam. So a true Muslim is one who's going to evangelize. And I don't like to use that term, because evangelism comes from the gospel. There's no good news in Islam, but you get what I'm saying. So if enough Muslims take their Quran seriously, they will be seeking to convert you. That's number one. Number two, chapter 9 of the Quran, called Surah Al-Tawbah, the chapter of repentance, and Surah Al-Bara'ah, the chapter of annulment. This is one of the last chapters that was revealed. You notice I'm doing this in quotation marks because Muhammad is not a prophet, to Muhammad. And this was Muhammad's final marching orders. And there he had now conquered the Arabian Peninsula. He had thousands of soldiers. So he had enough manpower, military prowess, to now impose his agenda. And what was his instruction? Chapter 9, verse 29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah nor the last day, nor forbid what Allah and his messenger have forbidden, nor accept the religion of truth, even if they are from the people of the book. And in the Quran, the title people of the book is a reference to Jews and Christians, because the Quran recognizes that before Muhammad, Allah, the Muslim God, who's supposedly the God of Abraham, sent down scriptures to the Jews and Christians. So fight them too until they pay the jizya. Jizya is a sum of money, so they can feel subdued. So now if a Muslim takes those commands seriously, so first, if he doesn't have enough military prowess, he's going to be inviting you to Islam and trying to convince you why the Bible's corrupt. But when they have enough military prowess, then they impose Islam politically, economically, socially. Now, thank the Lord, in America, there are only about 6 to 7 million Muslims. They can't do that. But keep your eye on the places where the Muslims become dominant, and what do they do to those areas? There are pockets in the UK that have been taken completely over by Muslims. You cannot do anything. So this is what happens. So look at when Islam dominates. They don't just come here for freedom. 90% of people do. Those who know Islam, they're coming here for an agenda. And then they impose their law upon the land. That's why I'm not exaggerating. If you guys can, go to UK. You'll find there are certain pockets in England. Muslims have completely taken over. And you cannot come in there and do what you want because you'll suffer the consequences. So,
Oh, there's a place like that in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it Dearborn? Dearborn?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, where they're under
They're
Islamic law.
discreetly imposing Sharia, which is
Yes,
Islamic
Sharia.
law, as much as they can, but they're not in the forefront. It's behind the scenes. But if you live there long enough, you're going to see it because you're living there and you see their influence and impact. It's going to happen also in.
Don't say Minneapolis. No, when I saw Mohammed Faridi talked about this, he was talking about Dearborn, and this interview was about 5 years ago. And in my mind, I was thinking he's going to say Minneapolis. And then he said, and the next major city that's going to follow suit is Minneapolis. This was about 5 years ago that he said
It's going to happen. Whenever the Muslims come and they become large enough, they will take over. Now, why? I just said 90% of don't know Islam. That's true. The 10% that do, that's when they will start preaching in their mosques. If you're a regular attendant to the mosque, that's when they're going to start indoctrinating you, brainwashing you, and causing you to want to be zealous to implement Islamic rule when you are uppermost. For now, you're biding your time like Muhammad did. It all comes from Muhammad's life. But